We've successfully drawn our first two-dimensional image to the screen. It's the background for our game. Fundamentally, what we'll be doing with our other game objects, the player's cannon, the enemy ships, and the cannonballs the player shoots at the enemies, won't be too different. We still need to draw them at a given size and position on the screen. But unlike the simple background we just drew, these new objects will have to be drawn at different positions on the screen, at different times. They will move and interact. While we've seen that we can draw a sprite at any size, anywhere on the screen using spritebatch.draw, we still need a way to track the position and state of our more complicated game objects. We have some simple data types we can use, such as vectors and floating point numbers. We can create some of those for each item and change them individually. But there's a better way. Let's create our own class, a code object that will hold all this data in one place. We can then instantiate this new class once for every game object we want in our game. We'll call this class GameObject. Let's get started with that right now. With your project open in XNA Game Studio, right-click on the project node in Solution Explorer. Remember, it's the node just underneath the topmost node in the Solution Explorer. Then select Add, New Item. When the dialog box opens, you'll see an entry at the top of the list called Class. This is what we want to create. Be sure to give it a name in the box at the bottom. Let's call it GameObject.cs. Click the Add button to add this new class to the Solution Explorer. You'll notice that it also opens the .cs file automatically to show you the code. There's not much in here, but you'll notice it's in the same namespace as your game1.cs file. That means that code in this file can work with code in your game1.cs file, even though they're in different files. Before we start writing code for this new game object, you'll need to modify this file a little bit. At the top of the file is a set of using statements. These are references to other namespaces that have classes we need. This file may not have the right using statements, and so we need to get a few more. You should have a tab for game1.cs still open in the tab list above the main window. If you see it, click it to go to game1.cs. If you don't see the tab, then double-click game1.cs in the Solution Explorer. We are now in game1.cs. This file also has using statements, a much larger set than our GameObject.cs file does. We want to copy over this much larger set to GameObject.cs. The using statements are at the top of the file, so scroll all the way up. You may see the using statements in a collapsed block, shown in gray text with a plus sign next to it. If so, just click the plus sign to see all of the using statements. Now, click and drag from the top left down to the end of the using statements. Then, right-click and select Copy. Switch to the GameObject.cs tab now. If you don't see GameObject.cs file in your tab browser, double-click the file in the Solution Explorer. Finally, highlight the three using statements at the top of this file. Right-click and select Paste, or click the Edit menu and select Paste. There. You'll want to do the same if you create other class files in XNA Game Studio. The using statements we pasted in reference the XNA Framework class libraries, which is how we can use XNA Framework classes like SpriteBatch. Now, let's take a look at this new class. You'll see that this class is empty. It doesn't contain anything or do anything. It's up to us to add whatever we want to the class. Place your cursor just below the class GameObject. Add a new line and then the following declarations. Public, texture 2D, sprite. Public, vector2, position. Public, float, rotation. Public, vector2, center. We'll use each of these at some point as we continue to create our game. Each of the objects in the game, from the enemy ships to the cannonballs, will use this data.